Welcome back to Dynamics Unplugged, and welcome back to D365 Supply Chain Management F&SC A to Z 2.0. Today we have the letter N, and N is for net requirements. Continuing on the theme of master planning from the letter M, we're going to talk about net requirements. Here you can see on my screen under the Plan tab, we have a form called Net Requirements. Other ERP systems, master planning systems, don't necessarily use this terminology. So what are net requirements? First, let's go ahead and ask Copilot. In D365 Supply Chain Management, net requirements refer to the calculated requirements for a product during the master planning process. This calculation helps determine the difference between the total demand and the total supply for a specific item over a certain period. The net requirements page provides detailed information, including coverage settings, breakdown by transaction type, and pegging information with some short descriptions there of each of those. So what does that mean? What do we actually do with that information? If we go ahead and we click net requirements, what is that showing? So number one, it talked about having coverage settings in the net requirements page. And I can see here I have all these different plans. So first off, it is breaking up requirements by my master plan, right? I can see different information for different master plans based on when they were run. In this top section, I see some of those coverage settings that are applied. For example, I see the coverage group that is linked to the item for this profile here. We can see that it uses a coverage group called rec, and if I click on that coverage group, these are the settings that apply to this item. It's a coverage code type of requirement. We're looking out 100 days in our coverage time fence. We have time fences and parameters that are specific to items that are linked to this coverage group. So coverage settings being a big piece of this. Going one step further, the planned order type for this particular item in Site 2, Warehouse 24, is production. It is not a purchased item. This is an item we manufacture. If I click on the item coverage tab, I can see additional settings. Some of those come directly from the coverage group. They might be overridden at the item coverage level for this particular item. You can see the coverage time fence of 100 days, positive days of 100, negative days of 2. The calendar it is using, we can see it as a minimum inventory level of 100 units, a max order quantity of 120, min order quantity of 18 for some default lot sizes. Next, it says breakdown by transaction type. So if I click here on the summary tab, I can see I have 36 units on hand. I have 102 in production in under receipt. So I have 102, and if I look below at the detail level, I actually see that production order for a quantity of 102. The other transaction types do not show any quantities because they do not have any inventory transactions here available. What we will quickly do is we will add some additional demand that we hope to see in the net requirements form. So going to add a forecast that's applicable in 2025 for my item. Do one for this month and one for next month. Change this by 1 day to make sure it displays. We will also go ahead and create a sales order for this item. Okay, I've now created a sales order for 12 units with a ship date 2/28. So we now have sales order demand, we have forecast demand, we have the on hand and the production order open. We're going to go ahead and rerun master scheduling for our master plan net requirements. Now that master scheduling planning optimization has rerun, we can see still our on-hand quantity of 36, our production order that had already been scheduled for 102 units. We can see several planned production orders stemming from the new demand we have, our demand forecast, our sales order of 12 units, additional demand forecast. And if we go to our summary, that aggregate information is now shown as well. A total demand forecast of 300, 100 for February, 200 for March. We have sales order demand of 12 units, and we have production, planned production of 276 for the various planned production orders that have been generated. So breakdown by transaction type was number two. Number one was the coverage settings, which are applied via coverage group, and also which plan we're running this for. In our master plan, we have a number of settings as far as which demand is considered when we run master planning. Are we including inventory transactions? Are we including on-hand inventory? Are we connecting to forecasts and allowing those to feed our master plan? So we have our coverage settings, we have our breakdown by transaction type, and then the last statement Copilot made was pegging. So down at the bottom of our screen, we can see pegging, and pegging is taking the demand and the output that master planning and planning optimization produced, which is our planned orders, as well as different suggestions or messages that we get. It's looking at the input from our coverage settings. It's looking how much on-hand inventory we have if we include them. It's looking at the supply as inputs and coming up with these suggestions. Pegging is linking supply and demand transactions together. If we look back at what Copilot said, it says details on how existing supply covers that demand and why specific supply was generated. If we use the Microsoft Learn article here that it referenced, it talks about the net requirements page, talks about the upper section with the overview, item coverage, summary, and period that cover the first two topics. And then it talks about that lower section. And the pegging fast tab will show the source and requirement, or the transactions that fulfill the requirement. It goes on to give some examples. If we go back to our D365 environment, and I click on this production order for 102 units that's scheduled to run, we can see that will cover various types of demand. So it's going to first fulfill the demand forecast that we have for February of 100 units. It also could cover additional production orders. Here it's splitting up some for the demand forecast because we already have 36 units on hand that can fulfill that forecast. So it's taking the remaining 64, fulfilling the demand forecast. Then it's going in and putting 12 units against that open sales order, and then starting to produce 26 more units for the 331 forecast. Then we get another planned production order here of 66 units. That fulfills the other part of that demand forecast for 200 units. So peg. So D365, the letter N is for net requirements, for coverage settings, for transaction type display, and for pegging to give planners a full profile of an item's inventory projections and master planning calculations.